Tubergen, looking for his first, but he's had a lot of success in the Modern Classics with Affinity, and his take on Affinity is different than most that you'll see. He's got a much heavier build of blue in his deck with Thoughtcast ×4, a lot of copies of Master of 3M, and a lot of different numbers, along with a stray copy of Hope of Gearpow, which perhaps we'll get to see in one of these games here. Tubergen is someone who's kind of flown under the radar here on the SCG Tour. He's still looking to break through into those top 8s and that big finish, so we get to know his name a little bit better.
But he has been posting some pretty consistent finishes with Affinity in the Classics over the last couple of months.
Correct. We're underway. It'll be a Scalding Tarn that brings McDuffie down to likely 17. That is a Watery Grave. I do apologize. Actually, Pieter Tubergen does have a win under his belt. He won the Modern Open in June, actually, last year. So my apologies to Pieter. Underselling him a little bit. Nick Miller always on the case, as we are going to have a Serum Visions, draw card, and now scry 2. See what Korey wants to do with these 2 cards. You see he's got a Snapcaster Mage in his hand. He's fanned out his hand pretty well here.
Kolaghan's command as well.
Pretty good against Affinity.
Enough mana to work with.
Looks like he's going to leave them both on top of the Serum Visions, and he'll pass the turn back over to Tubergen. Looks like a Darksteel Citadel perhaps in the hand here for the Pepsi fan.
And now we begin to count.
There's a Mox. That's an Ornithopter. This is an Arcbound Ravager.
Good start.
Not a bad start at all. You see the power of Mox Opal, folks. That Mox Opal's an invention, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not invocation. All right. Asking for a friend. Who really cares about his bingo board? Scalding Tarn's going to bring Korey down to 16, potentially 14. See what land Korey wants to search up. Obviously, whenever a player plays an Arcbound Ravager, you want to get that off the battlefield. We know that.
It looks like McDuffie's hand right now is powerful, but maybe a little bit on the slow side.
Okay.
With Snapcaster Mage and Kolaghan's command and so forth. So the second turn is going to be critical, because even with those good 2-for-1s in his hand, if McDuffie doesn't impact the board this turn and Tubergen has a reasonable follow-up, even those good 3-mana cards might not be enough to catch up. Liliana the Last Hope also in the mix there, and much the same.
It's time for a Thought Scour. Teamer Battle Rage. Tassiger will go to the graveyard. New card coming to Korey's hand. And that card was Fatal Push. However, it was time for a big fish in Gurmag Angler. Korey will pass the turn back over to Pieter. Pieter will draw. Didn't get a great look at it.
And I like playing the Angler this turn instead of the Push, because the Angler effectively shuts out combat. Tubergen has to make a move to be able to advance the board from this position, and you want to save that Fatal Push for later. I think a lot of people would have just instinctually Fatal Push the Arcbound Ravager, but because Tubergen's not in a position to make an attack, I like saving it for later.
Yeah, as do I. Plus, Korey gets the opportunity to maybe trap Pieter a little bit. Who knows?
Exactly, yeah. You want to have mana up and some instants at the ready when Tubergen decides to make a move into combat.
I believe that's our good friend Blink Moth Nexus. But it could be Ink Moth Nexus. Either way, it is a Nexus, and this is a Hope of Gearpow. Tubergen's got more to do on this turn with his beautiful Affinity deck. But for now, he'll surprisingly just pass. I suppose no good attacks to be had.
Right, that's the payoff here for the line that McDuffie took. He's going to be at the ready with instants down the line, and Tubergen wasn't in position to make an attack the previous turn.
To Korey.
Korey with a lot of options this turn. He has a Liliana, the Last Hope, and a Kolaghan's Command. I mean, my instinct here would be to play Liliana and plus on the Ravager.
What do you think about that?
Ooh, I like getting busy.
He's getting busy.
I mean, Tubergen's board's 2 flyers and a Ravager, so blocking is not that great.
Grimag Angler ain't messing around. McDuffie coming in for 5. Tubergen going to fall down to 15. Blood Crypt's going to enter the battlefield untapped. Korey's going to fall down to 14. And he'll just pass. Instants at the ready.
Yep. If he's passing here, I imagine that means he's trying to use Kolaghan's Command. Potential trouble with this line, he may not know Tubergen is playing with some copies of Stubborn Denial, which could be really punitive to McDuffie if that's his whole turn.
And it's interesting, too, because of Pieter's build again being so much more blue heavy than normal builds. Now, you are used to seeing cards like Spell Pierce in Affinity, even if they are heavier on red as opposed to blue. Stubborn Denial, though, not a card you oftentimes see, so something to be wary of. Darksteel Citadel will come down. There's another artifact land there for the Ravager. Tubergen thinking a lot about this turn. He'll fire up a Nexus.
I mean, the Kolaghan's Command has to be on his radar at this point. McDuffie with a really suspicious third turn there of land on tap and pass. No graveyard, so there's no Snapcaster Mage implications.
That's the old Inky. That one's got Infect.
Yeah, but I don't know. Tubergen giving this a lot of thought. I don't know if he's got a cranial plating or some such, but I think my instinct here is just to attack and see what happens.
Yeah.
McDuffie will clarify the game state for you shortly.
Sure, with some sort of spell.
Whatever he's got, he'll, if you attack, it will likely induce it. All right, there we go.
Yeah, I guess maybe the question is if you wanted to attack with Ornithopter 2. Not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd be playing around by attacking with Ornithopter. No possibility of Blessed Alliance, and I don't know what else it could, you know.
Oh, here's K-Command. Looks like he's going to destroy there. 2 damage there. You can see as he tapped a Ravager and Inkmoth Nexus, so those are his targets. Now, Tubergen does have Stubborn Denial in hand, which he has 2 copies of in the sideboard. This would be a pretty good spell to counter, I think.
I think we would have seen it on the table by now.
But it is kind of interesting because, you know, he could say maybe I'll load up on a different creature and let this resolve. Like,
the problem with that line is that I think you have to try to go wide a little bit against that shadow because they have so much spot removal that trying to just, okay, I'll load up on one thing and say go is, you know, likely to get you into some trouble against fatal pushes and what have you.
sure.
I mean, if he's got extraneous artifacts, if he's not doing anything with the Darksteel Cell and the Ornithopter, then sure, you know, whatever, you might as well. But I think ideally you would be keeping multiple threats on the battlefield.
So this is a 4/4. He'll put the counters here. So Inkmoth is going to come across for 5 Infect. This is interesting.
And I like loading up on the Nexus here because in spots where McDuffie is passing with mana up, you can simply not do anything. Oh, and we've sacrificed the Hope of Gearpar.
Mm-hmm. Pluto Delta will be the land there for Korey. And so now we're going to head back over to Pieter. Memnite attack. This will be a fatal push. We're going to see Stubborn Denial here in just a minute, I think. And now it's on Pieter to have a second thing. Excuse me, it's on Korey to have a second thing, which means he needs to have Snapcaster Mage. This is what Pieter tried to set up.
Yeah, I think Pieter took a really good line here, getting himself into a spot where McDuffie needed to have 2 pieces of interaction. But I think now with the Snapcaster Mage, he's got it.
And what I also think he was doing by sacrificing the Hope of Gear Power was basically saying, like, you can't Serum Visions or anything else to try to find something. So if you have 2 things, okay, but you have to have 2 things. And it looks like Korey does, thanks to Snapcaster Mage, which is going to fatal push here.
Yeah.
And now Pieter's board is, well.
And this is also part of the payoff of McDuffie playing the Gurmag Angler instead of pushing. Was wait, get your threat on the table, start attacking, and then try to be able to play multiple spells in a turn when Tubergen is forced to put all of his eggs into one basket.
Liliana's going to go up to 4, going to take care of the Memnite. 7 damage going to come across here from McDuffie. We're going to head to a 3rd game here in just a moment after Pieter draws his last card. As Korey McDuffie will tie things up against Pieter Tubergen. Grixis Death Shadow Affinity going to get ready for a 3rd game. Pretty well played game there by Korey.
I think that was a really well played game on both sides. Tubergen, I think, did a pretty good job of forcing McDuffie to have 2 things. And they needed to be 2 particular things. Sorceries weren't going to play there. And but McDuffie had it with Fatal Push and Snapcaster Mage plus the 4 lands.
Well, these 2 players are going to shuffle up and get ready here for game number 3. Tubergen will be on the play. And while they get ready, we are going to hear a few messages from our sponsors. McDuffie, Tubergen, Grixis Death Shadow Affinity, 2 open champions. Doing battle here early on in day number 2 of competition from Columbus. Take a look at Grixis Death Shadow, 10 copies into day number 2 of competition among the 84 players. For Affinity, 7 copies into day number 2 of competition among the 84 players. So Grixis Death Shadow still at the top of the helm, and you have to imagine of those 10 players, most of them are quite good and accomplished, because this is the like the, I guess I'll call it the pro player deck.
Yeah.
You know, this is the deck that the big names like to play.
The cool people club.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I like looking at it that way.
Yeah. I am cool, and that's why I play this deck.
Yeah.
It's the cool thing to do.
Hold on. Don't bring it up if they mulligan, sure. Big spot here for Affinity being on the play.
I've been in the spot, not with Grixis Death Shadow necessarily, but I'm on the. I've got a lot of really good cards in my sideboard against Affinity, but they all cost 2 and 3, and I'm on the draw, and I'm just hoping the first turn isn't too catastrophic.
Yeah.
If I can get out of the first 2 turns without too much bad happening, I should be okay. But sometimes it doesn't happen, even if your deck's loaded up with Kolaghan's commands and such. McDuffie's got a lot of anti-artifact cards on the board too. Rakdos Charm, Anger of the Gods, Ceremonial Introduction. So it's good, but you got to get out of this turn.
Well, there's Inky, there's a Jar, there's a Thopter. Okay, you got out of this turn.
That's not so bad.
Yeah. You got out of this turn, okay. McDuffie picks up a copy of Polluted Delta. Cycle Street Wraith will bring Korey down to 18. Liliana, the Last Hope, the draw. Very good card against this deck.
But also a little bit on the slow side.
It is. 16. Picked up a copy of Dismember. Here's Watergrave Tap, pass the turn back over to Tubergen. Darksteel Citadel. Cranial Plating. This is what you were talking about. Get out of the first couple turns.
Yep.
Unscathed, basically.
Not the most explosive draw here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jar plus Cranial Plating plus Creature Lands do put some weird pressure on McDuffie. That's not necessarily the easiest stuff for him to get out of, but he's got to be pretty thankful here that Tubergen's draw a little bit on the slow side.
I'm inclined to agree with you. McDuffie deep in the tank as usual. Methodical player.
And this is a deck with a lot of small but meaningful decision points.
Mm-hmm. That is a Scalding Tarn. Gonna fall down to 15 at least. All right, let's make it 13. He's done all the damage to himself, which obviously his deck loves to do. Curious to see what he's going to do, however, on this second turn of the game. McDuffie. Maybe looking at a push here? Discard spell?
I think he's looking at Dismember plus Death Shadow as his turn.
Boy. Okay.
Start getting some pressure going.
Okay. All right, there is Dismember. Going to fall down to 9. Ornithopter down. Just Dismembering an O2 that has nothing going on is pretty great. Just get that out of here. Go.
This deck doesn't always take the most intuitive lines.
Mm-hmm. That Shadow's here. It's a 4/4. Back to Pieter Tubergen we're going to go. Member of Team Bearded Dragon, aptly named.
Central Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I've not been.
Fair enough. Spire of Industry is the land for the turn. That's land 3. Third turn of the game, of course, here for Tubergen. I know it seems like it might be more than that, but...
I believe in Bernardsville, New Jersey.
Inkmoth X is going to wear a hat. That's for 5. We're going to head back over to McDuffie now.
And this was the concern I mentioned before is Jar plus Plating plus a creature land. It's tough for McDuffie to handle that sequence of cards because the Jar captures all the removal spells that he plays with at instant speed. At sorcery speed, you have something like Liliana Last Hope, but that's not going to do anything against a Nexus.
No, it is not. The big question here is does McDuffie have a third land, which it looks like he does? Does he have a Snapcaster Mage for Dismember? Will all of this work out? Can he beat a land plus a Stubborn now? He's got a lot of things he's got to weigh.
Yeah.
So I think his turn's going to be a moment.
Well, the big thing is, can you find a way to have 2 things up? Because you need to be able to beat the Jar, and you need, and even if you had Dismember, you need to be able to beat a counterspell. And if you could do a second thing, that'd be really helpful. I don't know if that's feasible. McDuffie might have to just say, I have access to Snapcaster Dismember, and if Tubergen has a mana and a counterspell, I can't beat it, but otherwise I'm in the clear.
Pluto Delta's a land.
You may not have a better line. Although even in the world where Tubergen has a counterspell, he needs another land as well.
Yes.
Because he needs a mana to turn on the Nexus and a mana to equip the cranial plating. And he's looking at Kolaghan's command right now. And that's exactly the type of card where, you know, it gets a little bit worse in the face of this jar. Though if he says deal 2 to your Nexus and blow up your plating,
there's a decision to be had.
The welding jar doesn't cover it.
Yep.
But if Tubergen just top decks a second copy of welding jar, you're beat on that line.
Sort of.
Oh, you remove from combat.
You remove from combat,
right?
yeah, so you get another turn.
Yeah, and McDuffie might be able to turn this into a 2-turn clock here.
Yep. At the time of the clock.
So I think you would want to start from McDuffie's position of get this game done in 2 turns. Don't try to play past that point. And then try to maximize the range of cards you can beat. I don't know if he has a line that allows him to beat a land and a counterspell.
Yeah.
That might not be possible.
Well, here's an attack. Tubergen will very quickly untap here, so we're going to find out. Tubergen takes 7 and falls down to 13, I believe. Boy, Pieter's really in the tank here.
Well, Tubergen last game I think showed he understands the range of cards that McDuffie can have in this spot, and he devised a pretty creative line to work around what was a fairly bad spot. So Tubergen right now was thinking about the implications, I'm sure, of what if there is a Snapcaster Mage and McDuffie can flashback dismember? What does Kolaghan's command look like? And do I have ways to mitigate those? Do I just need to say go here and hope to draw another mana?
All right, same thing. He is all in, for lack of a better term. This is a game-winning attack.
And now if you Snapcaster Dismember and you fall down to 2, your Death Shadow plus your Snapcaster Mage attacks for lethal. It attacks for lethal next turn. And you still have the Kolaghan's command to deal an extra 2.
Yeah.
So what's the concern if you're on McDuffie's side of this? I guess is, what if Tubergen just goes land Galvanic Blast?
Yeah, which is it is somewhat concerning. But that's the only thing you really have to be concerned about, I think. Part of me would believe, if I'm Korey, part of me would think he would have played his land pre-combat.
But
you don't know for sure.
No, you don't.
Yeah. Here's K command.
Yeah, I think McDuffie here is taking just a ultra conservative line.
2 to Ink Moth, destroy cranial plating of the modes. Figure out how you want to use your welding jar. This is going to remove the Ink Moth Nexus from combat because it's going to be facing lethal damage. Regeneration removes things from combat, all that stuff.
Oh, did you choose deal 2?
Oh, he may have just targeted it twice.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Destroy target artifact and deal 2? Not sure.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, that's... you make sure the 1 threat gets off the battlefield.
Okay. Death Shadow going to come across here again for 7. See what the follow-up is here. Big fish. Yep. We're going to go back over to Tubergen. I'm not sure how Pieter gets out of this now.
Yeah, well, I don't even know what's going on with his hand because his turns have been so cumbersome.
And he's looking at 5 cards in it, so you have to imagine there's something good going on there. There's Spire of Industry. I think we're looking at a Thoughtseize in his hand. A little late for that.
Yeah, I mean, they can't. It's basically it can't be threat cards and it can't be artifacts. So the what it could be is probably just sideboard cards.
Maybe he's just drawn too many.
It sure seems that way. I mean,
there's Arcbound Ravager. Well, Pieter Tubergen is going to concede the game. What's that hand? Thoughtseize?
A cranial plating and a stubborn denial. Yeah.
So it's just a weird set of cards.
Yeah, chunky hand with not enough threats.
Korey McDuffie going to win this match over Pieter Tubergen. Excuse me. Grixis Death Shadow will take care of Affinity, and you have Grixis Death Shadow moving on to 9-1.
And I think McDuffie's got a really strong match.